So everybody, thank you so much for joining. This is one of our strongest webinars in terms of registration. So I think we could be a little bit of timing, like Janet said, or it could be a topic that everybody's really interested in, or maybe a little bit of both. But super excited to dive into this. And yeah, so with that said, let's just jump right into the content here. We do have the chat open, as obviously you know. If you do have questions along the way, feel free to answer or ask them. Janet will be monitoring that. She might jump in and ask the question, right away, or we might hold it to the end where there will be a Q&A at the end for everybody. All right, so great. So in terms of the objectives of this webinar here today, first and foremost is we want to talk about, from our perspective, what the limitations are of inbound marketing. We want to talk about the importance of proactive business development. We want to talk about how to master thought leadership creation. Also, how to develop a strong content distribution strategy. And then finally, how to shift thought leadership from quantity to quality. So all of those are our primary objectives today that we hope everybody walks away from this conversation from. So that said, before we jump into it, Janet's going to be launching a poll here. And the question that we'd like to know is, how difficult is obtaining new business this year compared to last year? We'd love to kind of just get a read of the room to see how everybody's feeling, now that we're, in Q3 and closing the year out. So I'll let those, kind of come to light here, and I'll just kind of jump in while you guys are answering. So I know I see a lot of, familiar names, which is great. But for those who don't know me, my name is Banach. I'm the founder of the company. I started a concert promotions business in high school, would go on to work with artists like Lady Gaga and Pitbull. But then along the way, I pivoted into actually producing events for organizations and companies like Allstate and Disney. And that's when I really got involved with marketing. And I would go on then to start kind of a second career in agency business development, worked with many different agencies, helped them win clients like Kohl's, Constellation Brands, to name a few, and generated millions of dollars of revenue. And overall, now I have about 20 years of experience working with B2B companies, and in particular, helping them with proactive business development. A little bit about the company, so we help agencies and consultancies, like you see there up top, land predictably opportunities with companies like you see there on the bottom. And we help them through planning for growth, creating thought leadership content, building awareness and demand, and generating right fit leads. So a little bit about our philosophy here and what we see in talking with agencies and consultancies, every day throughout the weeks, is that many are still kind of stuck thinking that their word of mouth, their work and awards are enough to drive growth. But we know that the market is more competitive than ever, and the way that buyers are making purchasing decisions really has fundamentally changed. Therefore, we believe to land 6- and 7-figure opportunities and drive more predictable growth, that firms really need to shift their mindset and approach. And we call that approach relationship making, which is the proactively building, engaging, and nurturing connections with prospects that would lead to long-term and mutually beneficial relationships through an account-based business development approach. So that's a little bit about us and myself and why we're here kind of talking about this topic. But let's get into the main content here. Before that, let's do that. Yeah, let's do that poll results.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can share the results if you want me to put this up on the screen. I think, is this sharing to everybody? Can you see it? If not, I'll give it to you verbally.
Yeah, why don't you give it verbally? I don't see it.
Okay. I'm saying 49% are saying it is harder than last year to obtain new business. So that was the number one. Number two would have said 29% said it's about the same as last year. And then 16%, it's a lot harder than last year. And a lot easier, nobody had, which, I don't think you'd be here if it was that good. So.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so yeah, so roughly 65% said it was either harder or a lot harder. So
yeah,
great. Well, hopefully we can give you some ideas here today that will make it a little bit easier. I can't say it'll be a lot easier though. So let's talk first about the promise of inbound marketing. The promise of inbound really was this whole notion that you would be able to attract leads through your content, right? You would be posting things on your website, through social channels, and prospects would organically, find and discover that content. This content was to be educational, right? It wasn't self-promotional content. It was teaching them why or how that they could be doing something. And in the process, then positioning yourself as an authority. And because of that, these prospects that were reviewing your content would end up becoming leads for you. They would see how smart you are and how great your content is and how you can perhaps solve their problems. And then they would just be responding, to on your website or through your social media. This was in theory then supposed to be lowering acquisition cost, right? You would be posting this content. You wouldn't necessarily need to be paying for distribution or using, having to use outbound sales teams. And, over time then you would just get this sort of passive funnel of leads that would come in at a much lower cost. And then this would then lead to a more scalable and sustainable strategy for your lead generation. However, in our experience in talking with agencies, this has not been the case. And overall, it hasn't really been the case. And then really over the last couple of years, those who were seeing success are seeing a lot less success from those types of programs. So I'm sure we've seen, and heard the term, if you build it, it'll come, from one of my favorite movies of all time, The Field of Dreams. And that was really the promise of inbound marketing, but it hasn't necessarily always lived up to that. So the question is why? Why hasn't inbound worked? And I think one of the biggest reasons is content saturation. More firms than ever now are using inbound as a tactic. Inbound in some way, shape, or form has been around for hundreds of years, but HubSpot was really the one that kind of coined the term and really popularized the concept of it, maybe 10 years or so ago. And over time, more and more firms have kind of jumped on that as one of their, new business strategies. And this has led to an oversupply of content. And then the other factor here is just the number of channels that content can live on has exploded, over the last, 20 years. Think back before the web. And then you had the web, then you had social media, then video got popular, then you have podcasts. There's so many different channels now, and everybody's producing content for all of these different channels. And there's just been this sort of information overload. So there was some research done by Tenfold in particular. This was for B2B tech marketers, but I still think it tells a great story even for professional services firms, is that in their research, 92% of B2B tech marketers said they're creating more content compared to last year, 23. And 40% said that they're creating 3 to 5 times more content. So that's just 1 year. So imagine what that might look like next year and the year after that. So just an explosion of content that is out there. The second reason why inbound is no longer delivering is the notion of declining organic reach and a lack of search. Search algorithms are changing from Google and Bing. It's harder and harder to rank. There's the whole notion now of zero click, where they're putting, results, sometimes, their own results, up top, or, there's only the paid ads that are up top. So it's harder and harder now to, especially for the competitive keywords, to rank. Then the social media algorithms, we see it time and time again. A new platform comes out, people jump on it, they're getting tons of views, and then they introduce some sort of a paid model, and from there, organic reach goes down. We're seeing that on LinkedIn now, where a couple of years ago, you could get tremendous amount of views from organic content, and now they've introduced a paid model, which we'll actually talk about later. But that said, it's more becoming a pay-to-play type of thing. And then we also have seen AI. I know even myself personally, I'm using Google a lot less than before. I'll turn to ChatGPT, I'll turn to Perplexity, and I'll get, in my opinion, more direct, results that are more relevant to what I'm looking for. So again, for brand producing content, these platforms, can hurt the amount of reach that you're getting. Orbit Media did some research talking to bloggers, and they identified their #1 challenge was, no surprise, driving traffic is what they're experiencing as well. And then the third, reason why we're seeing inbound no longer delivering is that it is resource intensive and oftentimes, isn't producing an ROI. It is very high time and effort required, right? You need to create content. We talked about earlier how much content you need to produce, and for especially agencies and consulting firms who, we've all heard the cobbler's kids have no shoes, metaphor when used to describe agencies. Very busy handling client work. It's difficult to work on your business, especially when you need to produce this type of volume of content that is coming out. So that's one. And then the other is we're seeing, a lack of true thought leadership out there. I think it's because brands and agencies and consultancies feel the need that they have to just create content. They're losing sight of what this content is actually supposed to do. And it's not really thought leadership content. It's just content for content's sake. There's no real true insights or perspective or original research and thinking in a lot of the thought leadership that they're creating. Some research done by Content Marketing Institute and Marketing Prof shows that the most often cited challenge that wasn't related directly to content creation was in fact lack of resources. So it's a problem across the board right now. So with that said, our opinion, inbound marketing, yes, it's maybe not working like it used to, but we do still see tremendous value in thought leadership. And we see clients that we're working with, prospects that we talk to, when they're using thought leadership the right way, they are seeing results. But let's talk a little bit about, what is thought leadership in our opinion in the first place? Because talk to different people, you might get different opinions on this. So in our definition, if you will, of this, it's thought leadership is content that offers expertise, guidance, a unique point of view on a topic or a field. So again, this could be essays, videos, webinars, live presentations, etc. But this is not a case study. This is not about an award you won. This is not self-promotional type materials. This is truly, again, you're offering expertise, a unique point of view on something. So just wanted to make sure that we're on the same page when we're talking about thought leadership. So I'm going to do another poll here, but we're curious, what roadblocks have you faced with leveraging thought leadership for new business development? And we've got a couple of answers there. And I think you can pick more than one for this particular question. So if there are a couple that have been bigger roadblocks, please fill it in. So I'll let those kind of filter in here, and then I'll move ahead here. So we actually did some research of our own into agency websites. So we looked at around 309, I believe, websites, and we found that 68% have some sort of thought leadership on their website. 32% had absolutely nothing. Now, that said, the 68% that we did have, we didn't take it to this layer, but many of them, I could tell you anecdotally, had not been updated for months or maybe even years, or maybe they had one article on there or two articles on there. So I think if we were to go back and really look at who's consistently producing, valuable thought leadership, that number would go down dramatically. And looking across, other industries and B2B marketing in general, that number is lower than what we see in, across the board from other research. So, Jen, are we still getting responses, or do you think we can talk about it?
I think it seems to have slowed down. I've gotten about 60% of the group here, so I can end and show everybody where we're at.
Yeah,
Because it sounds like everybody can see it, but I'll also verbalize it just in case. So leading the pack on what the roadblocks are that you're facing with thought leadership for new biz, lack of time. That was 30% of this group. And then right behind it is low engagement, not enough traffic at 26%. So combined, that's 56% of probably the participants that are here problem.
Sure.
Latter is then difficulty in measuring that ROI by 17% and inability to differentiate at 15%. Executive buy-in came in about 9%. So really it's that low engagement and lack of time that really seems to be the predominant problem. And I don't think that would surprise either of us.
I'm surprised to see budget not up higher.
2% on budget, yeah.
Only one on there. So interesting. Okay, well, thank you for that. So in our opinion, the value of thought leadership, there's really kind of 5 key buckets that we put this in. So number one is differentiation in a crowded market. This is some research that actually Edelman and LinkedIn did, which I'm going to be quoting here in a couple different slides here, but 7 in 10 decision makers said that they're more likely to favor organizations that consistently produce high quality thought leadership. So in an industry that is oftentimes very commoditized, the services that agencies and consultancies offer, creating thought leadership is proven to be a way to differentiate yourself by sharing your expertise. You may offer similar services to other firms, but how you solve it and your thinking on how to solve it is usually different, and it's a way to express that. So that's one of the keys that we see here with thought leadership. The second is the ability to build trust and credibility. Same research from Edelman and LinkedIn showed that 90% of decision makers are more likely to respond positively to outreach from companies that deliver high quality thought leadership. So again, I think a couple keywords there. Consistently is one word that I think, unfortunately, it's tough to keep up with. And then high quality. Is it truly, insightful, unique, different than what I'm seeing else out there? But if you're able to capture that, it's a way to build trust and credibility with your prospects, again, by showing your expertise. Third reason here is it also helps establish authority and leadership. 70% of C-suite leaders say that thought leadership had at least occasionally led them to question whether they should be continuing working with an existing supplier. So again, you're creating this thought leadership. You are going to be seen as an authority and a leader in your space, to the extent that they may even question who they're working with, currently right now. So I think this also brings up an interesting point too, where if you're not creating thought leadership, you're putting your current clients even at risk, because it's possible your current clients are reading someone else's thought leadership and questioning whether, you're the right partner for them overall. So I think it could work both ways. And then the fourth here is it helps streamline the sales cycle. Saga had put out some reports that said 56% of agencies report longer sales cycles compared to the previous year. I know we did a webinar in the past about this thing, and we see it all the time. Everybody's complaining about sales cycles getting shorter. But by creating
Longer.
thought leadership, oh yeah, longer. Sorry,
Longer.
yeah, definitely longer. I wish it was shorter. But by creating thought leadership content, again, you're positioning yourself as an authority. You're getting credibility, which is then going to help shorten that cycle. And then the last thing that we see, a key reason for thought leadership, is it helps create a continuous presence in the market. So some research by Agency Hackers and Wix Studio found that the average time to close a new client is 3.2 months. So that means from your initial meeting to when you close the deal is 3 months. So how do you stay in front of your prospects over that period of time when you know that they're probably talking to others as well? So thought leadership is a great way to continue to build trust, authority, leadership with your prospects as they go through this sales cycle. And I know, talking more in the enterprise space, that sales cycle may be even 6 to 12 months long. So when you know that they're out, these prospects are out there talking to others, again, thought leadership helps you stay top of mind and position you favorably with them. So next slide. Content is king, but distribution is queen. So while we have kind of established here that the inbound promise is maybe no longer working like it used to, I think we've made a case that thought leadership is important, but where is the disconnect happening then? And it really comes down to, you can't just wait passively for prospects to find your content. You have to be creating content, but you have to be doing something with it proactively. So we are going to now outline 5 key distribution levers that you can pull to help get that thought leadership in front of prospects. So the first that we want to talk about is an email newsletter. And this, I can tell you, even talking about us, this has been our #1 channel that we've used to get our message out there. But I want to take a step back before I get into that and talk about a traditional newsletter and what we call a thought leadership newsletter. Your traditional newsletter would be something akin to new hires that you may have made, your summer interns, awards you've won, your newest case study, pictures of you planting trees at your, company retreat, all great things. But guess what? Your prospects, they don't care about those things. That type of newsletter is more of an internal newsletter to keep your team informed of what's going on. Your prospects don't care about those things. I hate to say it, but they don't. They care about thought leadership. How is your newsletter going to help them do their job better? So let's just kind of keep that in mind when we're talking about that. And that's, again, where your thought leadership comes in, and your email newsletter is a way to distribute it. So what we love about the email newsletter is that it is an ability to build awareness so you can reach new prospects with it. It also is a way to nurture people that you've already had in your pipeline or past relationships that you have. And it's a way to stay in their inbox on a weekly or bi-weekly basis without sounding like an annoying salesperson that is just checking in, every 1 or 2 weeks, on how they're doing. And again, in the process now, you are building authority by sharing this thought leadership. We also like it because it is an ownable channel, unlike social media, like we talked about earlier, and search, where you're victim to the algorithms that are out there. You own your email list. If you want to send it to everybody on it, you can guarantee that that email is going to be sent to everyone there, and you can do it at any given time. So email newsletter is definitely one of our favorite tactics to get thought leadership out there. A little bit of a case study here. So again, I mentioned that this has been our #1 tactic, and we have been able to attribute $2 million in revenue just to our own newsletter that we've built up over the last 4 years. And we continue, because we're seeing good results with it, to invest more and more and elevate the newsletter.
Hey, Christian, somebody brought up a question about
Sure.
newsletters. They said, how often should an email newsletter be sent?
Great question. So our point of view on that is that the newsletter should be ideally weekly, because you want to become a habit of your prospects, right? You want them to know every Tuesday at 10 a.m. or whatever your time is, they can expect to receive your newsletter. If you're sending it sporadically, every couple of weeks or every couple of months, they're never going to get into that habit, and they're going to forget about you. You want to make sure you're showing up, time and time again. Bi-weekly can work too, I think, especially if you're just starting off, but I really would do at least, a weekly or at least a bi-weekly, and aspire to do more of a weekly newsletter. Great, good question.
Mm-hmm.
So the next tactic that we have been seeing success with is LinkedIn thought leadership ads. So somewhat new, maybe in the last 6 to 12 months, I think LinkedIn launched this. So the difference between a thought leadership ad and a regular ad, if you're unfamiliar, is a typical ad would come from your company and appear in the news feed from ABC agency or ABC consulting firm, and that would be more of your traditional ad. A thought leadership ad is basically taking one of your subject matter experts, could be your founder, your president or strategist or somebody, and taking a post that they have made to their own network and basically boosting it. And using LinkedIn's advanced targeting, you can get very specific on the industries, the company size, the job titles, all the different capabilities they have to essentially make sure that that post will be seen by whomever your target audience happens to be. And what we love about this compared to, say, your normal company post is it is that human-to-human connection here. Because let's be honest, most people don't want to interact with a faceless B2B type of company, but they do want to interact with a human, and they want to get to know the people behind the firm. So this is really a great way to combine authenticity with the guaranteed distribution that these thought leadership ads offer. And again, unfortunately, it is a paid tactic now because LinkedIn has pulled back on the organic, but we've found this to be a really good channel. So one of our partners, Impactable, they have a really compelling story here. So they actually invested over $17,000 to promote one single post. And basically what they had done is JD, who is their head of RevOps, had posted something. It started getting some good traction. So they put a little bit of money behind it. They ended up getting some results. They put some more money behind it. And the net of that was over $17,000. But That may seem pretty crazy to promote one LinkedIn post to that extent, but it resulted in 34 closed deals just from that one boosted post. They got 70 calls, 50,000 clicks, and over 290,000 impressions. So that is sort of a best practice, though, is if the post doesn't get any traction in the first place just by boosting it, it probably is not going to do well. You want to make sure that it's something that seems to be resonating already with the audience, and then just put, some fire on the flame, so to speak. The next one we're going to talk about is live and virtual events. So when we talk about events, this could be putting on your own large-scale conference. I know that sounds like a big lift, which it is, but it could also mean more of an intimate, a dinner series or a dinner event where you're bringing your prospects together. It could be in person, or it could be virtual, like we're doing, here today. But what are great about events is it's an opportunity to deliver your content directly to a highly engaged, audience. I mean, we have, I think, 100 and something, people that are registered here today. Imagine the amount of time it would have taken me to go through this content to each individual, at one time, versus, in a more scalable fashion, these events can be very, very effective. In the process of you being the organizer of whether, again, it's an in-person, virtual, large or small event, you're positioned as an authority. You are the host, you're the MC, you're the person that is responsible for bringing everybody together. So you have a captive audience that is, listening to you. Some, research there from Saga shows that 46% of agency owners are prioritizing events as their top business development tactics. So that was the highest of all the different tactics that they had listed. So I thought that was interesting. And events, yes, we're talking today more about producing your own type of an event. But I think part of the reason for why we're seeing a resurgence of events is, zero or zone back to pre-COVID. People were kind of out and about doing their things. Then everybody kind of hunkered down in COVID. Now we've reemerged, but a lot of people are still not out there and going to the same number of events that they used to before. Everything has turned more virtual than it ever has before. So I still think there's this, yearning for more of that personal in-person connection. So something to kind of consider and think about. So here's a case study from one of our clients, DNA, which is a mid-size creative agency. But they had some thought leadership content around membership and loyalty programs at brands. And they had one of their clients that had agreed to do like a panel discussion around that. And we were brought in to help them recruit other panelists from notable brands, as well as help market and advertise the webinar. And the results to that particular initiative was there was 50 total attendees. We had brands like Costco, AAA, and Patron, either as panelists or attending the event. And as we talked about, a great platform for them to get their message in front of a large audience in, a short period of time, while positioning themselves as an authority on that topic.
Christian?
Yep.
Got a question or two here concerning the events. So somebody did ask, are there any examples that you would give of events that you might recommend?
Yeah, so I think what we talked about here, there's a variety here. So let's talk about maybe some virtual event platforms. So I think we've seen success doing more panel type discussions where it could be a closed type of thing where you're just reaching out to a select number of prospects and bringing them together as panelists to discuss a hot topic right now. And the idea behind that is these other executives, it could be lonely at the top. They don't always get to meet and mingle with other peers of theirs. So you can be the facilitator of this type of a group and bring together these different, chief marketing officers to talk about a specific topic. And they love it because now they're meeting other people. And again, in the process, because you're organizing this, panel discussion, you're seen as an authority. So it's a way then to bring these people together, meet them. And then what you can do is on those types of panel discussions, you're hearing what some of their challenges happen to be. And you could use that as something to follow up with these prospects with, hey, I heard on the panel that you mentioned this. maybe we should have a sidebar conversation around, how we might be able to help you in that area. So that's, one idea, and we've seen that. We've used it ourselves. We've used it with clients. Dinners are another thing that we could organize together. We had a client that had in New York organized, a dinner where they brought in one of their clients to talk about a hot topic. And then they invited, other prospects to that dinner party, if you will. So that was also very successful for them. I think one of the keys also is, because you might be asking, well, who's going to come to my webinar? Who's going to come to my panel discussion or my dinner series? So obviously you want to leverage your network as best as you can. If you can get one of your clients to join, and you can kind of borrow some of the equity from them. So if you, work with Amazon and you get someone from Amazon to come and join, that's going to make that, event seem a lot more appealing. Or again, like if it's a, nice restaurant or some other sorts of, things that you can kind of sweeten a deal, will make it even more appealing to your audience.
So I think there's another question around this, which as well is about the idea of, are more people finding benefit of attending a industry brand event like an ANA, or vertical specific an event, like if you were in financial services and it's around Money 2020?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer to that.
Yeah.
I think it all depends. Every situation is a little bit unique. I think there's value in just attending events, provided that the right people are in the room, and also what your personality is. Are you someone that is going to be that networker that's going to go out and meet people? Do you have a strategy? I know we do work with clients sometimes that are either attending events or sponsoring events, and they will come to us to try to set up meetings for them prior to the event. So this way we'll get a hold of the attendee list, or we know the brands that are attending, and we'll do some dedicated outreach to, again, schedule some appointments. So when they are there, they have something preset. So I think just attending an event, you might get lucky and bump into the right people, but also having a strategy is also important. But I also think, again, organizing your own events, whether even if it's something small or something virtual, has its own side benefits as well.
And a couple of people have put in comments some of where they've had some success as well. So I encourage everybody to definitely reflect on those as well. And, again, and if you have more, questions, especially in this area, keep sending them our way. We can also follow up at the end of the webinar and talk a little bit further.
Sure. Yeah, and if you have, things that have worked or haven't worked, please do put it in the chat. I think it'd be great to everybody learn from each other here. Another tactic that we see success with is using public relations. Now, when we say PR, we're not necessarily talking about just submitting for awards or trying to get featured at Adweek or Ad Age. Those are all nice, but what you really want to do is you want to be, and this kind of goes to what we just talked about the events a little bit, you want to make sure you're in the publications that your target audience reads. So if you're working in the financial services industry, getting into Financial Times is going to mean a lot more than getting into Adweek, because we might read Adweek and Ad Age in the marketing space, but the odds are most prospects aren't following the advertising industry world as much as we may think, and we hear that quite a bit. But if you're using your PR to first and foremost have your thought leadership and get your thought leadership out there into these publications, you're able to now borrow the trust and the prestige from that media publisher. So if, again, it has to obviously be a reputable, publisher that is respected in your space, but you can get that borrowed expertise. And this really helps enhance your visibility and your influence by being in these publications and borrowing their equity. So we work alongside Tony Lee, who owns a consulting firm that she primarily works in the advertising and marketing space, doing PR for agencies. And she shared a great example of exactly this, like taking thought leadership content and bringing it to different publications that were specific to her client. And one in particular, the startup media agency, was able to actually double their annual growth 4 years in a row, basically on the back of this strategy. They were actually even named one of Ad Age's media agencies of the year. So again, I think it's a lot of us are doing kind of the awards thing in the marketing space, but are we using PR to get our thought leadership out there? I don't know if that's always being done. And then the last one I want to talk about is cold outreach. So by cold outreach, what we have found to be one of the most direct and cost-effective ways to get in front of prospects, right? So having your thought leadership content, identifying who the right prospects are, and then directly reaching out to them through, it could be cold email, it could be cold calling, it could be LinkedIn, but doing so in a very hyper-personalized way, first and foremost. It's not just mass emails that are being blasted out to these prospects. There's real thought being done behind them. But the other key difference here is it's not just saying, hey, we'd love to meet with you for 15 minutes and walk you through our CAPES presentation and tell you how many awards we've won and how awesome our people are. Like, there's no value in it for the prospect. The idea with using cold outreach combined with thought leadership is that you would be inviting these prospects to a more one-to-one type of an experience to discuss that thought leadership content. So it could be an offer of a free consultation, a workshop, an inspiration session, where again, you're delivering these insights in a one-to-one way. And that is tremendously valuable because if you've done it in a targeted way, you are able to build that one-to-one relationship with those clients and really start that relationship off by giving them something of value. And then, hopefully if there's a match, you might be able to get something back. So Saga had also done some research into this and they actually found that the primary reason organizations will engage with agencies is that the agency provides something unique to say. So that kind of goes back to the idea of, if you're just going to reach out and ask them for 15 minutes for capabilities, there's really nothing you need to say. But if you've done your homework and you have identified problems that company is likely experiencing, and you've got a unique perspective on how to solve it, and you want to share some insights, that's really different than what most people are doing. So another case study, this is another one of our clients here. So this client is called Superheroes. They are an agency that originated in Amsterdam, opened an office here in New York, and was really looking to get exposure into the US market. And they had a really interesting thought leadership on how to engage with Gen Z consumers. And they have a thing called the Jimmy Digital Street Art Studio. So we were leveraging that thinking and reached out to companies, and we've been able to successfully land 18 meetings with companies like Chipotle, Tiffany's, and Gucci, and they've won multiple project wins and gained a lot of awareness in the US market, really through their thought leadership added with cold outreach. So hopefully these are, some inspirations on ways to think about how you can start to get your thought leadership out there. But before we get it out there, we need to actually develop it in the first place. So we want to go over a little bit about, from our perspective, how we've seen great ways to develop that thought leadership content. So the first thing that you need to consider is you have to establish your goals because there are different goals. Is it brand awareness like Superheroes was looking to do in the US market? Is it leads? Is it improved engagement with clients or prospects? Are there other specific marketing initiatives that you have running? Is it a combination thereof? But this is where you really need to start because your whole strategy is going to be based on, achieving what these objectives happen to be. The next thing is you want to get really clear on the problems that you uniquely solve for your clients. So the way we would do this with clients and the way we advise them is to conduct a win-loss analysis. So you would look at over the last 3 years, clients you've won, RFPs or opportunities that you lost, and you're going to identify what was the challenge that they came to you to solve. Now, I need a new website is not a challenge. That might be a solution to a problem such as our leads are down or our revenue on our website is down, but I need a website isn't a challenge. You want to get to the root of what they really were trying to solve by working with you. So you want to then look for commonalities. What were those challenges they came to you that you won? And then what were those challenges that came to you on those opportunities where you lost? And is there a difference between the two? But you're going to want to start to see some different themes on, hey, people come to us for these types of problems, these types of challenges, and we seem to win with it. That's what you want to get out of this. You also want to make sure that companies have demonstrated willingness to pay for the solution. I think we've all probably been in a situation where we know that a client should be doing something, but they just don't put the budget behind it. They have a laundry list maybe of problems that they want to solve, and certain ones are just on the bottom of the list and never seem to get solved. So you're not going to want to base your strategy around those types of problems. And the other thing is you want to be honest with yourself and ask, do you have a unique or novel approach to solving that problem? Because if it is something that everybody can do and you're doing it the same way as everybody else, again, that's not really going to lead to thought leadership. That's just going to be, thought followership, if that's even a word here. So you want to really think about, how do you do something unique and different? And then once you've identified those problems, now you want to figure out, okay, well, who's experiencing these problems? What are the industries, the company sizes, the locations? Who within those companies would benefit from solving these problems? What are their job titles? What is their seniority level? And this may start a big, list of different companies you could target. So you may want to then filter that by looking at other areas such as intent or signal data. So if you are doing webinars, who's been attending your webinar? Who's visiting your website? Who's signing up to your newsletter? Have there been job changes, new hiring, funding? So you're trying to take this big pool of companies that might be out there and narrow it down to those that are more likely to want to engage services. We call it a right to win audience. You want to look at your personal networks as well. Who do you know in what industries? And thinking about the buyer journey, are they aware of the problem? Are they aware of the solution? Are they ready to make a decision? And making sure that you think through all of those when you're defining who you're going to be speaking to with your thought leadership. So once you have that, the next step is to go out and gather insights. And the most effective way we've seen clients do this is through original research. Surveys, interviews, proprietary data. Whenever we're able to go to market on behalf of a client that has original research, it's 9 out of 10 times going to be successful. Again, why? It makes sense. In a commoditized, industry, if you have something that nobody else has and it solves potentially a problem that you think that prospect's experiencing, they want to learn, from you. So original research, would be the number one that would be on my list. That said, it's also the most time consuming and the most expensive, but something that should absolutely be considered when you're thinking about your thought leadership content. You're also going to want to look at secondary research. As you've seen throughout this presentation, I have a lot of different data points from a lot of different, resources, and I'd like to think it helps bring the story to life, a little bit better and support. It's not just me up here talking. It is actually backed by some research from some reputable organizations. So using secondary research is also great. And then informal research, internal team members, subject matter experts, inside or outside of your organization. We did that here as well in the presentation by bringing some different case studies that from either clients or partners that we've worked with. But all of this is another way to provide deeper insights, things that you're not necessarily just going to be able to find on ChatGPT by doing a search on Google, by really bringing something unique and interesting to the table. And again, this research by Edelman and LinkedIn found that 55% of decision makers said that strong research and data are key characteristics of thought leadership content. So you've got to back it up with insights. And then you're going to want to think through your strategy, right? You want to select 3 to 5 core themes, unless you have a huge budget, which I'm sure most, do not. You want to stay focused, right? You don't want to try to boil the ocean. Pick 3, 4, 5 different areas that you want to talk to over the course of a year. And then at least the way we've approached this and we advise clients to is develop something first and foremost, something more long form. Could be an ebook, a white paper, a more in-depth article. What you're listening to here today actually originated in an ebook and then has been repurposed now into a white paper. But we've found that it's a great way to kind of get all the content out there, do all the research, and then you can start repurposing it into shorter forms like blog posts, social media, and email campaigns. So that's how we would advise, like thinking through that piece of creating it. But then you also got to think through, now we've created, how are we going to distribute it? So we talked again about some of our favorite channels, which would be the email newsletter, thought leadership ads, virtual and live events, public relations, and cold outreach. So Again, if you're starting off, there's a lot of people, I'm sure, on this that are on different parts of their thought leadership and journey here. You probably shouldn't do all of them. Maybe you pick 1 or 2, maybe 3 channels at most to start with. Get really good at those, and then you can expand to other channels, as you see fit. Another consideration, is going to be budget. There will need to be a paid component, to if you're going to be boosting thought leadership ads, if you're going to be hosting events, they're not free. If you're going to be working with third-party service providers for, PR or for outbound. So you're going to want to make sure that there is a budget, behind it. And keep in mind also, there should be a budget, for creating, the content as well. You want to think through your timing and frequency. You're going to need a content calendar. You're going to need consistency. Again, thinking back to the buyer journey, this content that you create needs to live 24/7, 365 days. You can't just pop in with one blog and hope that all your prospects see it, the day that you posted it on, LinkedIn. You might get some people that are in market in the moment and they will respond, but 95% of your target audience isn't in market at any given time, but they might be a month, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months down the road. So you have to have a way to stay in front of them all the time. And that's why we like, say, the email newsletter. You can do the same thing with ads to kind of serve those up, at all given times. So you're going to want to think through not only the content, but how are you going to stay consistently in front of them with it. And then we talked a little bit already about the repurposing. It's not just having it in one format. People consume content, as we know, in lots of different formats. Maybe you need to see something in a long form and then be reminded of it in a short form. There's written, there's video, there's text, there's different platforms. So you do need to be in a lot of different areas. But again, don't necessarily boil the ocean with this right out of the gates. And then the last part, back to where we started with setting your objectives, is you need a way to measure success. So what are those engagement metrics, views and traffic that you're going to be monitoring, brand awareness, within your target audience, is that increasing? Are you getting leads from this program? And are you ultimately closing any business from the program? So those are all things that you're going to want to look at. Some of these are going to become much sooner. The engagement metrics you're going to see within weeks or months. The sales, it may take, 6 to 12 months before you start really seeing, results from a sales impact, revenue impact perspective. So as far as your path forward here, I know we've shared a lot of information, with you and hopefully given you some ideas here. So there's really kind of 5 key takeaways. I'm not going to read everything on here, but I know we're going to be sharing this deck along with the recording with everybody. So this way you kind of have like all the takeaways in one place. But, I think hopefully we've made the case for inbound marketing is declining, made the case that proactive business development is essential, why thought leadership is critical, why you're going to need distribution of that thought leadership, and then why you should really start thinking about more quality than quantity when it comes to your thought leadership content. So that said, I wanted to share briefly a little bit about if you're thinking about this, how maybe you could get support from a firm like ours or somebody else similar to us. We really help in 3 key areas. One would be in that creative and content. Another would be in demand gen. The third would be in outbound prospecting. We sometimes are brought in for all 3. Sometimes we're brought in just for one piece of this. So depending on what your needs are, we can play a part in all of that. On the creative and content side, it's really helping you with that thought leadership, either the strategy and or creating it to differentiate and position you as an authority. So could be original research, could be, writing blogs, could be case studies, any of the above. On the demand gen side, it's how are we going to help then target awareness of that thought leadership content with those key accounts. So it could be, again, email newsletters we could help with some events, help with paid advertising. And then the last part is outbound prospecting. So how are we now going to directly engage those key decision makers to actually drive meetings and opportunities? So here, we could help play a part in either one-to-one outreach, one-to-few, or one-to-many. Again, it could be email, could be cold calling, it could be LinkedIn. So that said, I'm going to turn over to Q&A in a second, but before I do that, I just want to say if anybody's interested, in having a free consultation just to talk about their situation, we want to offer that to anybody that's on the webinar. We kind of thought about this as people in two different areas. Like you might be more in the launch phase where you don't have any thought leadership, or what you've been producing is underperforming, or you're just looking to create something really super high impact. We'd be happy to, hop on a call and just help you kind of think through and provide some recommendations. And then you can take it and implement yourself. If it's something that you think we could help with, great. But either way, we'd be happy to help with that. Or maybe you're in the bucket of like, hey, we're doing thought leadership. It's good stuff, but it's just not getting the visibility it should. It's not maybe getting any engagement, or it's not turning in any new business. And same thing, we'd be happy to hop on a call and kind of help you think through that, make some recommendations. And then again, you can do what you want with those from there. So that
Excellent.
ends that. But I'd love to, see if there's any questions. Feel free to put them in the chat. I don't know if we've had some others that have come
Yep.
through.
We've had a couple, and I've just been kind of waiting till we got to this point. I think I'm going to address the one. People are just wondering about a fee structure. What is our typical fee structure and setup for some of the services that we were talking about?
Good question. So it can range wildly, as you can imagine. On the creative and content side, it could be a couple $1,000s down up to, could be $50,000 if we're doing a full scale research report and turning it into an ebook of some sort. So it could range, but again, you don't have to do something huge to be effective. So it could be on the lower side if you're just starting out. On the demand gen side, typically the lowest you're probably going to need to invest is a couple $1,000s a month. But again, it could go up to maybe $10,000 a month. So it's a range. And then on the outbound prospecting side, you're probably looking at around $5,000 to $10,000 to do a more, account-based marketing outreach type of approach. So I know that's kind of a vague answer, but what we really do is part of our engagements always start with a strategy phase where we're going to really dive into understanding your situation, what your budget is, and try to provide a program that meets all of those needs.
Excellent. Excellent. Another question around some of our thought leadership is, what are some of the ways to get the thought leadership out of our leadership team's heads? And I think that's a really good question, because we know that you got SMEs at your office and it's up there.
Yeah. I think I'm not going to go back to the slide, but I think one of the best ways, because the reality is everybody's a little bit different. Some people will sit down, put pen to paper and write for you. But in my experience, a lot of people are just too busy for that. So interviews is one of the things that we've found success with. Most people are very open to, scheduling a half hour, multiple calls, whatever you need. And you come prepared and with questions, and you just ask them questions about things. And that's incredibly easier now than it was before, because you could use the different tools to record the calls and use ChatGPT to kind of summarize your notes. So that process is actually a lot easier than it was even just a couple of years ago. But we found that to be, probably the best way is doing interviews, with them, and even just getting them on the phone then kind of gets them involved in the process. And the next thing they're referring you to different resources, or they're sharing different documents and things that they have in their toolkit.
Excellent. Here's a question that we do hear occasionally. Does anyone have an opinion about cold calling? And I know we do.
Yeah, it's funny for us. I mean, because when we first launched, cold calling was a huge part of what we did, equal to email. We generally, for clients, are targeting more enterprise level businesses. And what we've found over the last couple of years is that cold calling has dropped down. The connection rates are really low. When you do connect with someone, they're not too happy about you connecting with them. So we have pulled away from a lot of cold calling. That said, I know a lot of people in the outbound space and in maybe SMB markets, they're still seeing some success with cold calling. That said, we still do pick up the phone for clients, but it's usually when we've sent them a prospect something and they have responded, and maybe they just haven't, we need to follow up with them. So we're definitely not afraid to pick up the phone if somebody's engaged with us, but a pure, true cold call, we just don't see the ROI on it in most cases anymore.
Excellent. I want to go back to another newsletter question too, which is a good question and a couple parts to it. So the ask is, how long should a newsletter be?
Hmm.
What would be kind of some top content ideas around the thought leadership? Because thought leadership is so broad. And so is not knowing who the agency is. So I'm gonna put that there too.
Yeah. We've seen, I know there's newsletters that are super short and they have seen great success. I know some that are super long, 3,000-4,000 words have seen success. I think if you look at some of the more popular newsletters like The Hustle or Morning Brew, I mean, they're generally around like 1,200 words with maybe 4 or 5 different sections. So it's more of like a bite size. But again, there are other newsletters that will talk about one topic and they go super in depth, and that's their issue. So I don't know if there's a right or wrong, answer here. I think it kind of depends on who you are and who your target audience happens to be. But again, I mean, the lens that we always think through with the newsletter is, at the end of the day, does it help your target audience do their job better? And if that happens to be because they read a long form thought leadership piece from you, or they're getting 5, quick news and views of their industry that they need to know about, or you think they should know about, any one of those could be potentially valuable.
Awesome. Okay, I know we have like 2 more minutes, so if anybody else has some more questions, please get them in here. Um, Somebody asked about, what do you think of LinkedIn newsletters?
LinkedIn newsletter. Yeah, not a huge fan of the LinkedIn newsletter, basically because of what we talked about earlier. You don't own that list, so to speak. So it may be in some cases a little bit easier to get them on the list because they're already in LinkedIn. They can click one button, but what happens when LinkedIn changes their algorithm?
And they will.
And they will, and then they're going to make you pay in order to send that newsletter. So I wouldn't build, if I was going to build a newsletter, I would not build it on LinkedIn primarily for that reason.
Yep. Okay, so last question. I'm gonna, at least so far. How is the best way to assess if the thought leadership content we have is really offering some unique insights?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think part of it is just looking at your competitive set. I think part of like when you're creating your thought leadership content, you should be aware of what your competitors are doing. So, we do work with a lot of firms that they don't really ever look outside. They think they're this kind of unique snowflake. And because we work with so many agencies, like we hear the same type of stories, all the time. So I think part of it is being aware of what is out there in the competitive world. And I think that's key. Also, just being aware, not necessarily in your competitors, but what are the industry trends that are happening? Are you sharing unique points of view from your own experience? Because if you're talking something that is uniquely to your own work with clients, your own experience, then it is, thought leadership. You're not just regurgitating something that you got elsewhere. So I think those are, a couple different areas. I don't know, Janet, if you got any additions to that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think they said even some of the things we do, we recommend surveying people that you may also be in your own newsletters, do that kind of, research to be able to just ask them, from that standpoint. Maybe you want to send out a survey monkey, from that standpoint and get some feedback from whatever kind of list that you feel pretty confident about that would give you true feedback. And, sometimes we have what we call friendlies. And sometimes there are just some of those more colder prospects. Obviously, that might be more from a friendly. So I would definitely consider that as well.
Right. Well, we're right on time here. So thank you, everybody, for joining, and everybody who hung on here to the end. As we mentioned, we will be sharing the deck along with the recording, so feel free to pass it on. And as I mentioned, if anybody is interested in just chit-chatting about their situation and going a little bit deeper, just shoot me an email back and we'll schedule something in the weeks ahead. Awesome.
Thanks all.
Great. Thanks, everybody.